Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy nearly Friday.
Happy nearly Friday. Almost Friday. Yes, pre-record, but we are here this week. Sorry we missed last week. I was struck down by illness, but I'm going to plough on. I'm nearly better. But thanks for sticking with us. And welcome to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. This week, we are going to have a look at the results that have been coming out over the last sort of 10 days or so, and see if that tells us anything new about the market. And we've got a bit of shipping and climbing news as well. So let's kick things off, Ben. And let's dive straight into some of the results. And I think the first bit of news is Lloyd's coming back into... Aviva coming back into Lloyd's, rather.
Yeah, well, let's start here. We were going to do this last week, but it's had a week to percolate and hasn't been much more written since last week. So there we are. It was just a done deal, and that happened. And people said how interesting Aviva's coming back into Lloyd's. So they bought Probitas, a smallish syndicate that's been running quite profitably and growing quite well. So it's about a 242 million, GWP. I think it was bought for around that as well. Anyway, it's not huge. It is somewhat, I'd say, overplayed by Aviva in terms of what they say about it. I mean, they're talking about Lloyd's being a major source of untapped growth and all this sort of thing. So I think this is the sort of statements you make to try and impress the market and your investors and analysts that you've found some growth that you hadn't hitherto known about. John Neal has talked about hunting big game, and this is more. He wants more of these kind of players. So I think I suppose it's a nice thing for everybody to say, look, big name, big brand coming into Lloyd's, supporting Lloyd's. Lots of lovely words. They are going to keep the management team and the brand, so they say. Let's see if that happens.
Yeah.
I think there's. We'll come back to this, but I think it's an interesting move, and it might just say something. It might be just opportunistic to some extent. I mean, it talks about 2 decades here, but clearly, Aviva has not wanted to come in at all in the last 20 years. I think I would say I don't think it would have been able to at certain points because it just isn't that sort of player really. But
yeah.
Because it's a personal lines composite type, UK retail type insurer. It doesn't even have an international operation, so it's not quite as big a thing as they've made of it all. I mean, it's opportunistic, I would say, in my view, but it is sort of interesting, and obviously, they've got a very high profile chief exec and everything else. So interesting. Not going to change the world, but it says something that now almost any brand can come into Lloyd's.
Yeah.
They'll have anybody, mate. Anybody.
Anybody. So I was it will be interesting, I think, whether they keep the management team and the brand for the very reason that you've just described, that, they are known for their car, household, pet, that is the Aviva brand, and you would have thought their area of expertise. It will be interesting to see how it plays out and how they're going to develop that business and what Aviva are going to bring to the party. So because they do have, and I know from experience, they have on the IT and ops front, they've made massive strides in developing new technologies, engaging customers, and perhaps they do have something that will enhance the operating and customer elements in the London market.
Yeah, it could. Although they're working through just a syndicate, aren't they? Which probably hasn't had that sort of investment. And I agree. I mean, I don't think that we do see them. They're pretty big in property. I mean, obviously they appear in that, and they are one of the brands that we would say is there. But it's a strange beast. I mean, I think Allianz Commercial, as it's now known, it used to be AGCS, even AXA to an extent. Those two have kind of more of a what I'd call a sort of propositional presence, in that they kind of you feel they've got a reason to be there. I think your point about its pets and motor and stuff like that is well made. I mean, I think it's that's what they're really known as. They're not known for specialty, so it's brand wise, it's interesting that they're not saying they're going to use the brand in London, although in property they are present.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah,
we will see and watch that. All right, let's move on. So as I mentioned, it's been results week, or week 10 days. So we thought we'd dive into some of the figures, see if we can pick out any trends. And you've got a couple of charts, Ben. Let's start off with this kind of.
Yeah. So let's just. I mean, overall, Lloyd's, and we'll come back to this, as profit of 11 billion, best return for 15 years, average 84% COR versus 92% last year. So they had most of what has happened though is interest. This is largely driven by interest returns. So last year, this is 5.3 billion of interest in these numbers versus a positive plus and a negative 3.1 billion last year. So there's a big shift, and that's because of reasons that we know about in the global economy. So their money has been earning much more than it has been for many years. And these numbers shown here by ICMR, who do a kind of, which we'll come on to, a kind of stock exchange analysis, as if these insurers were equities, of their performance of the Lloyd's players. And they're looking just here. I thought it was just interesting to show the whole period of time. So anything, certainly between 1965, or let's say 1975 and 2000 was disastrous, really, in terms of underwriting.
Yeah.
Asbestosis was obviously the big thing. Various hurricanes, Piper Alpha, all sorts of disasters and things that were played out. But ultimately, those led to hard markets. But the investment returns for particularly the period prior to 85 were holding up the market. So you could argue they had such good returns by the money just sitting in the bank that somehow the underwriters got sloppy, or even kind of fraudulent, really, which is what happened through the crisis over asbestosis and so on. So anyway, that kind of was and actually there is a line drawn here after the move into 2000, where actually it does look over a period, that the underwriting's got better, or it's not making as big a loss, contributing in some ways in terms of net earned premiums, investment returns are not bad, but the last few years have been pretty rubbish on investment, and this last year has been very good. So you can see there the investment loss last year. Okay, so we're kind of dealing with cycles still, and that's it's a really nice chart by Simon, who we partner with, so it's good. Well done to them.
So let's bring in the second of these, which is the kind of stock market type.
So you asked the question right at the beginning: has anything changed? Well, I think it's fair to say that if you looking at the numbers this way, which is ICMR's sort of what they call their weighted average cost of capital, which is treating this like a return on investment type analysis in lay terms. This is showing that actually returns were pretty good, apart from the 2011 where those big cats, windstorms, and they were, the return on capital was pretty good before then. But since really 2015, that has been pretty low, and therefore investors have been a bit down on this sort of market. And bang, boom, up it goes from into the current year, into 2023.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like there's a sort of trend there or continuing growth or improvement in the market. I think that's the fairest thing to say about it, but it's a good year.
Yeah, indeed. And well, we can build on that a bit more, because you picked out the letter from the Chubb CEO, which it was kind of his interpretation of the numbers, obviously from a Chubb point of view. And I think firstly, it kind of alludes to the points that you make, Ben, around, is this a trend, or is it a flash in the pan? And we can dive into that. I think he then also talks a bit about the opportunities and threats, I think, going forward for the market as well.
Yeah, so if I can, I'll try and get through this quite quick, rattle through it. But I think it's a really interesting document that Greenberg produces, and it's not dissimilar to Warren Buffett's letter that he does, which picks up. But Chubb has a much wider scope, I think, in terms of insurance. It's the biggest player in the US, and it's now a very, very big player in globally, but also in Asia, as we'll come to. So Chubb has 40,000 employees, 1,000 offices. It's really kind of worth listening to what Greenberg says, and this is written in a kind of easy to read style, so that you can kind of get what it is. It's a personal style, so it's a good thing to do, I think. So he first of all touches on losses, as we've just looked at. So he said they're actually still very high. So that year on year, losses. Insured losses exceeded 100 billion for the fourth year running. So that's a bad trend, right, for the insurance industry, because then it shouldn't be going up and up. I mean, it's going up, but that's what it is. So but he does say that you've got to note the absence of a single major insured cat loss. So what that means is, of course, there wasn't one big storm or something, or hurricane that wiped billions off the in terms of claims. So Chubb says his loss, or Greenberg says that Chubb's losses were 1.8 billion, which is below expectations. And he explains it by saying we were just lucky. There was no. He's not claiming to be brilliant, seers of the future. He just said, we were simply lucky. There's no other explanation. There probably should have been a big cat, but there wasn't. And right. So good. Nice, easy to understand. He talks then about where the business is and what he sees as the kind of opportunities. He talks a bit about social inflation, saying that's really an issue, excessive litigation. He talks about property being the best kind of insurance product in the world, because it's got good rate, and it's something you can you kind of manage in insurance terms. Casualty, he says, yes, it's fine, but he said it is an underwriter's market. He describes that, and he said you have to treat it with caution, because it's, particularly because of social inflation and things like that. So he's essentially saying he's concerned about casualty all the time. You have to watch it. You have to determine what you write or don't write. And he said, particularly in D&O, that's really underpriced still and has to be sorted out. Cyber, he describes as a very dynamic and emerging market, and therefore good for insurance, which is interesting, because some people say don't touch it with a barge pole. Greenberg's kind of positive, said we've got to be in it, we've got to be doing it, it's a central part of insurance. And he then talks about the global economy and how he views it. So he says that the two most dynamic markets, Asia and the US, and both for economic and insurance growth. And he says they now represent 77% of Chubb's business. And interestingly, he expects that to be a sort of 40% growth over the next few years. So it's fast growing. And Korea, apparently in Asia, is their second largest country market, with 3 billion in premiums. It's interesting. I didn't even know that, and I just think kind of worth looking outside of London a little bit to see what's going on. Yeah,
definitely. That's amazing.
So he actually, interestingly, described he moved his office. I don't know if he actually moved his office, but anyway, he went to situate himself in Asia. And this reminded me of the HSBC thing, actually, where they said the CEO would sit in Hong Kong. I think that backfired on them. Anyway, so he just did it. He did 6 weeks. So he's trying to get a better understanding of the people, the region, and everything else. And he said, "I'm incredibly positive. It's amazing what's going on, the dynamics of that market, and therefore he's basically saying very committed to Asia overall." He talks about China, on the other hand, saying that has been a long, hard road. 4 billion invested in their Chinese operation.
Crikey.
Just to acquire that and get through all the licenses through the Chinese government. And he said, basically, we overpaid, but he sees it, they see it as a long-term opportunity. And he says, that's the bet. The bet is that it's a long-term opportunity. So we're here for the long run. So, that's kind of his view of, China, Asia, very dynamic. China kind of really tough, but you kind of have to be there.
Yeah.
He talks then finally, I think, really about AI and tech, and he talks about some other things like climate. I won't go into those, but they're just not so interesting. But AI and tech, he says AI is profound change, obviously. He kind of reels out some of the typical cliches about it's dangerous, but it's good, and it's which we've all rehearsed. They have a thing called Chubb GPT, and he said they've been using that sort of thing for quite a long time, 4 or 5 years, I think. Mainly from what I can tell, reading this is kind of at lower end of things, for simple kind of administrative type task, repeatable task. And he said it's good, it's really good. He thinks it's positive and really good and will transform businesses. But he describes it as we are realistic, and this is an iterative technological development. So he does not see AI, I think, as transformational. And I think we've touched on this before. I think there was an Economist article we touched about maybe a couple of months ago, saying that it's almost the same thing, as it takes quite a long time for this stuff to come in. Now, why I think it's important for Greenberg is he's a very careful investor in technology. And I know from working with Chubb that he doesn't get bowled over by it. He's kind of realistic, feet on the ground. We're not going to overspend on it. We're going to be careful and cautious. So it's interesting, his view of AI, I think.
Yeah.
So that's Chubb. I mean, you take all this in the round, and he's kind of reflecting what you've seen in those numbers in Lloyd's. Really brilliant. They've had a brilliant year, but and there's a bit more to come. But we've got to be cautious, a bit more cautious about the future now. Yeah.
So I think that so just to add to the AI kind of talk, I think that's why I'm here as well. It's like it's being used at quite a basic, in inverted commas, level, but the results are pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think that just builds confidence in organizations that they might then be able to roll it out into other aspects. I don't think anybody really believes that it's a fundamental game changer in terms of how products are developed or distributed, or the fundamentals are not going to change through this. I think it's about efficiency and productivity and using valuable resources in the most effective way, and taking the drudgery out of stuff, which is what we talk about a lot. So,
which I wouldn't underestimate. I mean, I think that is important.
Yeah.
Where 40% cost or whatever the figure is now, if you look at London, I mean, say that's a lot of people doing admin, as we've said before. It's take that away, and you do free up people a lot. So maybe it is the boring technologies are sometimes the most interesting.
Yeah, no, and I think that's right. And so what you might find is you have kind of innovation on the edges rather than at the center. There's not going to be a revolution or a transformation, but there will be lots and lots of rich applications around the edges of what we do. And as those productivity gains are seen, that sensible companies, you would have thought, would reinvest some of those savings into better tech and more proof of concept. So I think it's really good. But
I think he's done a good job. I don't think you could you know, you can say that Chubb is highly representative of a lot of insurance operations. It's the biggest commercial insurer, I think, in the world, or certainly in the US. So yeah, I mean, he's a very switched on sort of person, talking about exactly what's going on. It's not the usual kind of kind of high level stuff you get from. It's an honest appraisal. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it is. And then if we let's bring it full circle and back round to London, with this story in the FT, and actually, and whether any of these results point to any kind of trend, and your analysis, our analysis is probably not.
I think no. I think we've had a great year. I mean, I think insurers have had a great year. I think that is clear from all the numbers, but it's also clear that this is a little bit of a flash in the pan. That might be somewhat unfair to say, but nothing fundamental has changed. Trend isn't necessarily going to be carrying on like this. It's a bumper year. It could just as easily go down as look at this, a bumper year, and then next year there's a big cat, and it's just on that ICMR chart you see a big spike down. So it still shows, I think, just how much or how little, I suppose, the underwriting business gets to grips with bucking the cycle, the trend. It's still a bet. It's still as Greenberg says, you get lucky sometimes, and others you don't. You do your best. So no, I don't think anything has changed. I mean, clearly it's a time at which some of this could and should, as you say, might be invested in technology, but that again isn't coming through here as we're going to plow it into new technologies and whatever. That's not coming through either.
Yeah.
So stuff like the best underwriting performance is 2007. Yes, but I think the ICMR figures are better at showing the reality of what happens in the market, and I think the analysts know that. I always find the Lloyd's number a bit strange because it's an aggregate of lots and lots of businesses, and it's not really the businesses themselves. I think the businesses themselves are quite interesting. If you look at Beazley, they're saying we're going for growing out in the US, with the E&S business, which is because property is complex and difficult in the US. So lots of it's coming into the non-admitted markets. That's something we've heard a lot about as well at Grace Church. So that's fine. Hiscox is also kind of looking at the US and SME growth. So again, different strategies. They've all got different things going on. But they are all launching on. These players are launching onshore operations in the US. So Lancashire's just done that. Hiscox already has one, and Beazley is growing its out, according to Bob Quain, the head of underwriting.
Right.
So the move into the US is interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Right. Thanks for that, Ben. That was good. Actually, just before we leave this photo, I was just looking at it going, is this the photograph that, this is the stock image that they go to for a picture of Lloyd's of London? It's bad, isn't it? It's just like, I mean, at least
it's not an underwriting quill pen anymore, is it? At least they've moved on.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, moved on. Anyway, let us move on onto something absolutely completely different, Ben. So I saw this actually today, and I think we've touched on kind of insurance and its role in innovation and ESG and things like this. And this is news of sail-powered cargo ships. Shows the potential of wind, and so these ships have been retrofitted. So they're not new ships; the sails have been added, and the potential is pretty good for saving a lot of carbon dioxide. Mainly because ships are quite often sitting outside port waiting waiting for a birth or whatever they call it,
Right,
and
yeah,
they're just burning stuff for no reason, just to stay there. So yeah, it's not a silver bullet, but it's interesting story. And
well, it is, and it's kind of modern sails, isn't it? They're like blades rather than. So I think a lot of these, like in lots of areas, the old technologies or the old things come back a bit, don't they? But in just a different, more modernised form.
Yeah.
And blimey, they are massive.
They are massive, aren't they?
I don't suppose you'd be sending up the cabin boy up to the top of those to do them anymore. There'll probably be an app on a phone or something, won't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Press the app and turn the sail.
Yeah, download the Crow's Nest app.
Yeah, that's where you've lost the late. You don't have to have 25 people doing all that stuff with the rigging and everything else. It's just
That's it.
Amazing.
That's it. So that was good. I thought that was a nice bit of news there. I'm sure insurance will be well behind that. I know that Paolo Cuomo has got his ESG forum up on LinkedIn. So if anyone's interested in all that kind of stuff, just look up ESG on LinkedIn and Paolo Cuomo, and you'll see all the stuff that he's putting out about it, which is really good stuff. Okay, so Ben, let's get on to rock climbing. So before I got ill, I was away. I was canoeing, and I was also rock climbing, and and a bit of abseiling as well. My friend,
Is that you?
That's not me. No, that's my friend Piers.
Oh, okay, he looks good.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. Look at that. But yeah, we were abseiling down some quite steep things.
That's good. Did you enjoy that?
I quite liked abseiling. Yeah, I remember doing it as a kid, so I was happy with that. I'm not so good with heights anymore.
No.
But
I'm not, but you get used to that if you keep on doing it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You've just got to do it to get over it. Anyway, if you want to know how not to do it, then that's how not to do it.
That's you.
It's not me.
No, it's not you. Someone has what? Fallen backwards on the abseil.
They've just gone backwards without without moving their feet.
Dear
and so
Lord.
I was at the top, and all I saw is these feet pop up. And a lot of laughing from below and a bit of screaming from this guy.
Oh no. Yeah.
God, it was so funny.
Yeah.
It took about 15 minutes of writing, but anyway, he was fine.
It's like a beetle, isn't it? Beetle scenario.
Yeah. Oh dear me.
Yeah. Oh God, I've never seen that before.
Well, that's exactly what the instructor said. He said, "You don't hear that. You don't see that very often." He went, "Actually, I've never seen that."
I've never seen that. You have to actually be quite good to do that, to get into that position without really hurting yourself as well.
Anyway, that was a bit of fun.
To ridicule him even further.
Yeah, I mean, they took videos of it, and just very, very funny.
Yeah, good for him, whoever he is.
Yeah, there we are. Okay, that's it. How not to rock climb. Right, what are you doing this weekend, Ben? You rock climbing?
No, I've done that. I've done quite a lot this week, just off and on, just lunchtime things. I've done probably enough. I'm going to do. Oh, I'm going to play.
Oh, really? What are you going to say?
Culture, mate. Uncle
right. Where's your mic on? It drops on the floor.
Sorry. The mic's dropped. I dropped the
mic drop.
There you go. High tech. Yes. So I'm going to a play called Uncle Vanya, Chekhov, if you didn't hear that when I dropped my mic.
No, I didn't.
And it's a bit of culture.
Nice.
So that's good. What I'm doing. Well, my wife said, "Do you want to go to the theatre?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Oh, okay." She said, "I like the theatre," so I thought I'll book it.
Oh, well done.
I'm not massive on the theatre, but this might be okay.
I don't like musicals.
No,
but I like plays. I don't mind a play.
Yes, I don't massively like plays. I sometimes like musicals, but I generally Yeah, I like musicals more than I should. Yeah, they're a bit of a guilty pleasure in some ways.
Right.
I don't like kind of slightly pretentious theatre acting. I find that gets on my wick.
Yeah, I can imagine it does. Yeah.
Yeah, so I tend to avoid it. But anyway, so it should be fine. It should be good. This is it's not in London. It's in Richmond anyway, so it's not really.
Yeah.
It's not
You'll be
London
safe.
theatre, darling.
No. Pre-show dinner. 4:30.
I'm going to the matinee actually. Then, if it's
right.
terrible, I can
Go to
drown
the
my
pub.
sorrows afterwards. We're going for dinner after, which is quite good. I've got
Good.
something to look forward to then, and I won't fall asleep as well. That's the other very great potential of going for dinner before.
I always find the theatre so hot. I mean,
Yeah,
incredibly hot the entire time. Anyway. Right. Thanks, Ben. We will see you next week. We're going to InsurTech Insights, aren't we? So we'll give you...
yes. InsurTech Insights. There'll be some reports back from the extravaganza carnival atmosphere.
Yeah.
Bloody hip-hop rave scene what's it called? Yeah, InsurTech Insights.
Yeah, all that kind of thing.
God,
so,
I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be...
I mean, you're going to love it, man. I can't wait to film you there.
I'm literally giving you 3 hours and I'm out of there.
There you go. Okay, thanks everyone. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.